Welcome to Newsmax TV. I'm Kathleen Walter. With us now on the phone is Representative Steve Scalise, Republican from Louisiana and chairman of the Republican Study Committee. And Representative Scalise, thanks so much for being with us today.
Well, it's great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Well, the Senate yesterday passed its bipartisan comprehensive immigration reform legislation. Is this legislation indeed dead on arrival in the House, as Senators Mike Lee and Jeff Sessions have said?
Yeah, the Senate bill is a non-starter in the House. I mean, it focuses on amnesty and it does nothing to really secure the border, which in the House needs to be the first step that's taken to reform our broken immigration system. You've got to start with securing the border.
Okay, so we've heard a lot about how the House is taking a different approach with immigration reform, creating piecemeal legislation. What can you tell us about this? What is the game plan in the House?
Well, what the committees of jurisdiction have been doing is working on the bills where there's consensus. And there's already been a border security bill that's passed out of the House Homeland Security bill by Congressman McCall, the chairman of the committee, and it actually starts addressing the real problems that would actually secure our border, which did not happen in 1986. You know, one of the big problems with the Senate bill is it repeats all the mistakes that were made in 1986 when the last major rewrite of our immigration laws happened. They gave amnesty and they promised border security, and of course the border security never came. And then you fast forward and we've got 11 million more people here illegally. And the same problem will happen again if the Senate bill were to pass, and that's why there's such strong opposition in the House to that. So we're taking the issues that are things that we can get agreement upon, and then moving on from there.
We've heard that the House bills don't include amnesty. Is this the fundamental policy difference between the House bills and the Senate legislation? And is this also the main reason behind the piecemeal approach?
Well, the Senate bill was focused on giving amnesty, and we're opposed to granting amnesty. There's a legal process to come into this country, and the system's broken. We want to fix that. But the other side of it is border security. The Senate refuses to address border security in a way that actually works, and we actually have a real strong approach to securing our border. So those are two very big differences. When you get into issues like work visas, student visas, and what about the 4 million people who are waiting in line? There are more than 4 million people who are waiting in line to come into this country legally. They're playing by the rules. What message does it send to them that 11 million people who came here illegally are going to actually have more rights and benefits than they will?
Considering the very extreme difference of opinion between the House and the Senate, are you confident that immigration reform legislation will be signed into law this year?
No, there's always an opportunity to get a bill passed or multiple bills passed, but it's got to start with border security and a recognition that, look, we're a country of laws, and we're a country that was built on immigration. My great-grandparents came here from Italy, and they helped make our country great and had a strong work ethic, and we still encourage that. In fact, 1 million people every year are granted status to come into our country legally, which is the most generous nation in the world, and that's something we're proud of. So we want to continue to build on the things that are really great about the immigration system, but we also know that there are problems and there are real breakdowns with the legal system that we should fix. But we should also make sure we don't create additional problems by failing to secure the border and just granting amnesty to people who came here legally when you don't fix the problems that exist today and recognize the folks that are waiting in line the legal way.
Okay, let's say the House passes piecemeal immigration bills. Can you enter into formal negotiations with the Senate if the Senate immigration bill ends up lacking majority support of House Republicans?
We can always, once we pass bills out of the House, see if there's the ability to get a consensus between the House and the Senate, but the Senate's going to have to get away from this stubborn idea that they refuse to secure the border and that they want to grant amnesty to people and ultimately give taxpayer benefits to people who are here illegally. That's something that we're not supportive of in the House because frankly, it really undermines the legal system of immigration, and it shows disrespect to those 4 million people who are waiting legally in other countries to come into America. They want to be a part of the American dream, and they're playing by the rules, and now 11 million people will have the opportunity to jump ahead of them, and that's just not fair.
Now, Speaker Boehner says that he won't bring up the Senate immigration bill for a vote without majority vote. Will House conservatives make sure that he keeps his word, and if so, how do you plan to do that?
Well, we've been pushing our leadership in the House for months now to give a commitment that they would not bring an immigration bill to the floor that did not have support of the majority of our Republican conference. And so I was glad to see that Speaker Boehner made that commitment publicly, and it's something that we're going to continue to make sure stays the case, because I think if you want to see this issue addressed properly, it's got to be done in a way that conservatives are at the table, and we're focusing on addressing the problems, not just some bill that's trying to get some political points to be scored, but actually one that addresses the problems in our broken immigration system. And I think that's what you're seeing coming out of the House committees right now. That's why we're taking a much more methodical approach, where we're addressing individual components, and we haven't put any of these lines in the sand what the Senate did, where they said, we'll pass any bill as long as it doesn't secure the border and it gives amnesty. Our approach is, let's actually fix the problems, and it starts with securing the border. The fact that we don't have a secure border is one of the reasons we have 11 million people here illegally.
Is the Republican Party's future threatened if there's this perception that they're blocking reform?
No, in fact, one of the things we're going to continue doing is going out and reaching out to all communities and sharing our conservative message. I think that's something that we can always improve upon. But also telling the story of legal immigration and how immigration legally done actually has helped make our country great, and it's something that I think all of our members have a real story to tell. I'm very proud of the Italian heritage of my great-grandparents who came here from Italy, and how they helped be a part of the American dream, and that's something we want to continue to make available to everybody who wants to come here. But there ought to be a system that works, a legal system that works, and right now we just don't have that.
Before you go, I want to ask you about your letter to the NFL and the NBA after Kathleen Sebelius announced that she's been talking with sports affiliates about paid advertising and efforts to encourage enrollment under Obamacare. What was your message to the NFL and the NBA?
Well, first I want to make it clear that I think it's not only inappropriate, but I think it's unethical for anyone in the Obama administration to be pressuring any organization that they regulate to help promote Obamacare or any other law. That's just not the role of government to go in and try to shake somebody down that they have regulation authority over. And the fact that Secretary Sebelius doesn't recognize that it's unethical to be doing that really says a lot about her judgment. And so I wanted to point out to the NFL and the NBA that, number one, while the administration is asking them to help prop up Obamacare, they're here in committee hearings admitting that they're not ready to implement the law. The reports have been coming out independently that have proven that the administration's not only missed deadlines to implement the law, but in fact it's completely unworkable. And the lead Senate architect called the bill a train wreck. And so all of that I think ought to be included. And and I also wanted to get information from the NFL and the NBA about what kind of contact they've had from the administration. Again, getting back to this unethical side of the issue. The fact that Secretary Sebelius would even make a phone call to an agency she regulates, asking them to go and help promote some law that's unrelated to the regulation is inappropriate and unethical, and the call should have never even been made. So the other thing I'm doing is calling on Secretary Sebelius to stop doing this and to stop pressuring agencies that she regulates to go and promote this law. And our oversight committee in Energy and Commerce is investigating these unethical activities. So I just wanted to point all of that out to the NFL and the NBA to let them know that if, in fact, they have been contacted by the administration, I'd like to know all the context and the details of those contacts, what they've been asked to do and why, but also point out all of the failures of the administration as it relates to Obamacare and how it would have such a dramatic and devastating impact on their fans throughout the NFL. I know in Louisiana alone, where we have both the Saints and the Pelicans, the recent study came out that showed that Louisiana families would face over 50% increases in their health insurance premiums because of Obamacare. And many of these are fans of the Saints and fans of the Pelicans, and so before they understand they're maybe being pressured into doing this, but they also need to know the impact this would have on their fan base, and the fact that even the administration's admitting that this bill is not ready for prime time. And the bottom line is the Secretary should not even be making the calls in the first place. The Obama administration needs to stop acting in an unethical fashion, pressuring agencies that they regulate to go and help promote their laws like Obamacare.
Last question for you is on the Supreme Court's ruling this week that the Defense of Marriage Act is unconstitutional. Do you think that the House will take up legislation to protect traditional marriage?
Well, we're looking at all of our options right now, but clearly I was saddened to see the decision by the Supreme Court. There's a very strong bipartisan coalition in Congress under President Bill Clinton that passed the Defense of Marriage Act. And not only that, you've had a majority of the states in this country that have strongly stated that marriage ought to remain the union between one man and one woman. And in fact, when you've seen it go on the ballot in so many states, even in California, voters have very strongly said they want to see that relationship maintained. And a lot of the reasons that people have put laws on the books is because they don't want unelected judges making these kind of decisions. These decisions should be made by voters and their elected representatives.
All right, Representative Steve Scalise, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And thank you for watching Newsmax TV.